Hello people from YouTube, my name is Zadarkus and I welcome you to another Bronze to Diamond episode. In today's episode we are going to talk about playstyles. There are three primary playstyles in the game. Even though each player is very unique in the way he plays the game, most fall under these rules. The first playstyle is the aggressive playstyle. This playstyle focuses on being very offensive on your opponent and get as many kills as possible to snowball and carry the game. In my opinion, this playstyle, even though being the more risky one to have, brings the higher rewards and is the best to carry games in solo queue. Players from this playstyle may have a hard time when they get ganked or fall behind, since their lack of defensive mechanisms makes them an easy target to shut down, and when it happens they may not have the ability to come back at the game and have a difficult time to be useful in the match. So said, being this one of the best playstyles to carry games and have a bigger impact in the game outcome, this might be the hardest of the three primary playstyles to master and the easiest to throw a game with, so be careful. The second playstyle is the passive playstyle. This playstyle focuses on farming and normally only harasses back as a defense mechanism. Rarely will look for the kills and will only engage if the fight feels safe. This is the most common playstyle since it is the easiest to be executed, and less experienced players have a high tendency to be passive when faced against more experienced players for the lack of their confidence and mechanics. This playstyle is very easy to beat in many ways, but as well is very easy to make mistakes against. In my opinion, this is the playstyle with less impact in the game, and by that the hardest to carry games, since the player will mainly focus on staying alive and farming. If the other lanes do not do well, or if the opponent laner decides to roam and bring advantages to the team, this playstyle may have a hard time to bring the balance back, as it won't risk plays and prefers to cash in the creep score and build up for the late game. It ends up being more effective in competitive gameplay and team ranked, since you die less and end up giving less gold to the enemy, which in those scenarios is a lot. Sadly, that may not work in solo queue. The last playstyle from the three primary playstyles is the bait playstyle. This playstyle focuses on tricks and baits to score kills on your opponents when possible, still having a high focus on the farm. Normally this playstyle is very similar to the passive playstyle, yet having always the ability to capitalize on the opponent's mistakes. A very common example is during the laning phase suddenly being more aggressive to bait the opponent into an all-in engage while the jungler is waiting for the perfect time to gank. This playstyle requires a lot of mastering and a creative thinking, but thanks to those, it ends up being equally effective in competitive team play and solo queue. Now that we talked about the three primary playstyles, let's see how they work against each other. Against the passive playstyle, the aggressive playstyle should be the best option and win the matchup, since the passive playstyle will try to stay alive and keep the farm up. As the aggressive playstyle, you can take control of the lane by forcing trades that your opponent doesn't want to have and has no way to react to. Once pushed against the tower, the aggressive player may roam and bring advantages to the team that the defensive playstyle will not be able to counterveit. In the best case scenario, by harassing the defensive player, either he will be forced to go back to the base and miss farm and experience, increasing your advantage, or if he ends up being greedy and tries to get more farm, it may lead to a kill for the aggressive player. Now, against the aggressive playstyle, the bait playstyle should be the best option and win the matchup. This works because aggressive players will be looking for kills, and as a good bait player you'll be able to trick them into situations that will lead to your advantage. Some fast examples are the baits into tower dives with a last second heal, barrier or flash, or just an ever boring AFK bait, and believe me, it works sometimes. In the end, aggressive players normally are easily baited into bad situations since they are always being over aggressive, ending up tunnel visioning on the kills. Against the bait playstyle, the passive playstyle should be the best option and win the matchup. This happens because the defensive players will focus on the farm and don't tunnel vision as hard as the aggressive players, making it harder to bait them. The baits mostly will lead to nothing, and during that time the passive player is building up for the late game, as he always loves to do. Now that we know how we should play against these playstyles, it's very important that you learn to read your opponent's mind and playstyles and try to adapt yours on any given matchup and time. Just remember that playstyles may change during the game, depending on the situations, as for example, an aggressive player who died 3 times falling into your baits, starting to play more defensively, in which case you could try to be a little bit more aggressive and take control of the lane. Still, all players lean towards one playstyle, so even if the aggressive player plays more defensively, be careful, as once he sees an opportunity to fight you in an all-in again, he mostly will do it, because in the end that is who he is, an aggressive player. But the triangle doesn't end here. As players get more experience in the game, they will start to have somewhat of a more inconsistent playstyle, and by that harder to read and to counter. The next 3 secondary playstyles are harder to master but offer more options and more benefits. These 3 normally are the combination of 2 primary playstyles. The first secondary playstyle is the combination of the aggressive with the defensive playstyle, the passive-aggressive playstyle. The passive-aggressive playstyle is a much safer playstyle where the players wait for the perfect opportunities to engage. The players will farm and not risk himself too much unless he is sure he can capitalize on his aggressive maneuvers. The second secondary playstyle is the combination of the aggressive with the bait playstyle. The aggressive baiter uses a lot of cheesy strategies to gain advantages thanks to the knowledge of the champions, the game, the role and the mechanics, ending up on capitalizing on these. An example is to know that he will be level 6 before the enemy once the next minion dies, engaging in an all-in when both are level 5. During the fight he is going to level up first, and thanks to that he will be using his ultimate as a surprise factor, leaving no chance to the enemy. This playstyle is very successful against players with less experience, since they will fall a lot more for the baits, since normally these are what we call invisible baits. The last secondary playstyle is the combination of the passive with the bait playstyle. The passive bait player is very good at noticing changes to capitalize on them and have a great ability to understand what is going on in the game. This player tends to look passive until he builds up the opportunity to outplay you. For this example, I would say a top laner who played defensively all lane, and once he went back to base and got Sheen, knowing the skill set of his champion and the increase of damage thanks to the Sheen, baits you to fight him. Knowing his damage potential and yours ends up baiting you in a fight where you would hardly ever win. As said before, these playstyles are much more complex, being harder to master and involving a lot more skill. For that, these do not have a real hard counter, only soft counters. Yet, normally the passive-aggressive player would have a higher chance to be beaten by the passive bait player, since the passive bait player should be more patient, waiting for the passive-aggressive player to do something that will lead to an advantage, especially if he can frustrate the passive-aggressive player until the point where the passive-aggressive player forces a play to fall into the bait. The aggressive baiter is beaten by the passive-aggressive player, since the passive-aggressive player will not overcommit for the aggressive baits, waiting for the perfect moment, while the aggressive baiter might get nervous and anxious, forcing a play if nothing happens for a long time. The passive baiter loses against the aggressive baiter thanks to their crazy and creative nature. The passive baiter will not always know if the aggressive baiter is actually baiting or just being aggressive, by that not knowing if they should be aggressive back. Thanks to that, the passive baiter may be baited into a really bad situation thanks to the aggressive playstyle of the aggressive baiter. Even though you may think that the passive baiter would be more defensive against a more aggressive bait, you have to add the fact that aggressive baiter knows the concept of baits as well, yet he has the aggressive playstyle that primarily is the best against the defensive player. These secondary playstyles are mostly seen in higher elo players thanks to their in-depth knowledge of all playstyles, adapting their playstyle on any given matchup and champion select. A player who masters all three primary playstyles and is able to execute the secondary playstyles is what we could call a good player. Faced against a good player, you might have a really hard time thanks to their ability to adapt to your playstyle in the most complex and outstanding way possible. These players are the ones that we see time to time carrying our games with crazy decisions, plays and scores. I would strongly suggest that each one of you should understand your main playstyle and try to expand to the others, so you can become a more consistent and complete player. I hope this helped you understand how matchups and playstyles work. Let me know what you think and use the comment section below to tell me what playstyle fits yours the best and if you already mastered multiple playstyles. As for me, I see myself as an aggressive player branching into the aggressive baiter, so I know for a fact that I need to work into my passive playstyle, since some games I cannot capitalize on my opponent's mistakes or I fall behind because of mistakes I do myself. Now, if you really want to support me, remember to subscribe to see more videos of mine. Remember to hit that like button if you liked it, share it with your friends or on Reddit, it really helps out a lot. This video was made for you. You know my name has been Zadarkus. Be awesome, stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.